Hey everyone, just setting up here for our first part of positive planning. Thanks to everyone who's joining in and waving. I'm trying to wave back to everyone I can. Thanks so much for joining. And I know that, this has been a rough couple months for almost everyone I know. And everybody's trying their best. And the reason I put this idea, this positive planning idea together was because I'm seeing so many couples have the same questions and seeing so many families have the same questions that it's, it's really information is needed out there. And so I've come out here with my little clipboard with my notes about what we want to chat about today. And hopefully we can get through most of that. And of course, if you have questions, feel free to add. I did get some questions ahead of time as well, and I'm going to try to address that. So we'll get started right away. The three main things we wanted to chat about today was rescheduling your wedding. So should I reschedule my wedding? When do I make that call? And how do you go about rescheduling? Those are the three main things we want to cover today, and I've broken it down sort of by those three sections. And hopefully after this little chat, you'll have a full understanding of the steps to take, of how to process this and how to think this through and see if it's the right choice for you, and how to proceed with it. I've put together a couple tools as well that hopefully can help you along the way. So feel free to ask your questions or reach out to me after. Either is fine. But let me get started with the first question, which is, should you reschedule your wedding? This is obviously not a question that any couple ever envisions that they're going to have to answer. But these are unprecedented times, and everyone is going through something we've never been through before, and it's a really hard situation to be in. So if you're at that spot where you've been asking yourself, should you reschedule your wedding? I just want to begin by saying I feel you. I'm so sorry you're in that situation, and hopefully together we can make it through this. So getting into question number one, first thing you need to ask yourself with rescheduling your wedding: do you have a lot of guests that are coming from out of town? Now, that could be that could be like Ottawa, Montreal as well, but really we're focusing here on how many international guests do you have that are attending the wedding. Even if emergency orders do get lifted, it's going to be a little while before international travel sort of normalizes again. So if you have a lot of guests that are coming from out of town, that's the first thing you need to take into account. Even if things go back to normal, it's going to take a little while for international travel to go back to normal. And so you want to make sure that you've taken that into account. The second thing you want to think about is these international guests. Are they your parents? Are they your siblings? Or is it someone that is a very close bridesmaid to you or groomsman to you, without whom the wedding just wouldn't be the same? If that's the case, you wanna take that into account, and you want to make sure that you've considered that there is a possibility in keeping your date that this close person may not be able to attend. I do have a bride whose parents are not in Canada, and this has been a big concern for her. So they're sitting out right now waiting to see when international travel is open again and they can have her parents join the wedding, because it's not going to be the same without them. And I completely get that. On the other hand, if your international guests are uncles and cousins, people who you would have loved to celebrate with, but if you had to take that call, would you still be able to proceed without them? So those are really some serious conversations you need to have with yourself and your spouse about who are your international guests and how important are they to the wedding actually being what you envisioned it being. Second thing you need to do is think about how significant is your date. So if you've been booked for the 27th of April, say, I have a couple who their wedding date was going to be their 10-year anniversary date. They've been together 10 years, and that date was very significant to them, and they really wanted to be married on that date. Is your current wedding date an emotional significance for you? Would you feel okay? Would you feel comfortable rescheduling that to a different date? You need to answer that question and decide from there where you want to go with that. Next thing you want to consider is, how do you feel about a change in wedding size? Because can you possibly keep your date? Maybe, but you may not have the same amount of guests that you were expecting. So if you were scheduled to have a 600 person wedding, and I have a bride who's scheduled to have a 600 person wedding, you may not have a 600 person wedding. Even if you can have a wedding, it may be a smaller scale wedding. How does that feel? You need to have that conversation with yourself and your spouse. And I say with yourself because it's really about self-reflection. You need to think about this. You've obviously envisioned your wedding happening a certain way. Everyone's had dreams and hopes for their wedding day. You've been planning this for a while. If you need to change that up, if you need to downsize that guest list, how does that make you feel? Is that gonna be a big emotional hit for you? Or do you feel comfortable enough saying, okay, we're gonna have an intimate wedding now. We're gonna be just close family and friends, but we wanna really just be married. And we have couples who've chosen that. They said, you know what, regardless of how many people can attend, we just want to be married, and we're gonna keep our date. We're gonna do 5 people up on a rooftop. We're gonna be married. And the only people that attended that rooftop wedding that I mentioned, I think I shared it in my stories last week as well, was the officiant and the couple and a photographer, I think, and witnesses, I think. So yeah, everybody was able to maintain their distances, and they went ahead and they got married. The date was significant. More than anything, they just wanted to be married, and so that's what they did. So those are the 3 questions you need to really consider when you're thinking about, do I need to reschedule my wedding? Is how many international guests? How significant are those international guests to you? And how significant is the original date to you? Is it an emotional date? And how do you feel about a change in wedding size? So all of these things, once you've taken them into account, hopefully you'll have a better idea of, do I need to reschedule or not? Next part of our conversation was meant to be, when do you make that call? So in order to sort through that, I would say generally 6 weeks out is a good time to know whether you should make that call or not. So initially, we rescheduled our March and April weddings all at once because the emergency orders came out sort of mid-March. And so at that point, we rescheduled everyone who was March and April. Now, slowly, we're doing May and even the beginning of June, our couples have rescheduled. So if your wedding is within the next few weeks, and by that I mean within the next month or the next 6 weeks, I would say it's time. The other thing to think about, and if your wedding is not within, like if you're July or August or September, but you're still thinking about this, everybody's scared, everybody's, apprehensive, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. I get that. It's not a bad idea to just think about it and to answer those first 3 questions I talked about. How do you feel if you have to reschedule your wedding? How is that going to work out for you? So it's not a bad idea to just have that conversation with yourself and your partner and think about where you want to be. If you come to that 6 weeks point, you know what your next steps are going to be. The other thing to think about in whether you can reschedule or not is, how flexible are you going to be in choosing a future date? So if you, for instance, are moving to, say, 2021 now, how much flexibility do you have? Does it have to be a spring wedding in 2021? Does it have to be on a particular day of the week in 2021? Does it have to be a particular month in 2021? The reason I ask you to think about that is if you are more flexible, then you can wait longer. If you know that your future flexibility is going to be limited, then I would say get the ball rolling sooner than later, because you're going to have to think about all the dates getting booked up in the future as well. Because, for instance, all of my April brides have already chosen dates that are either in the fall or in 2021. And so 2021 is going to be busier with not just 2021 couples that would have naturally been 2021 couples, but also with 2020 couples now moving over and competing for those same dates. So if you find that your availability is limited in the future, or if there's a lot of parameters that you need to consider when choosing a future date. For instance, if you're having a wedding that has 2 or 3 events consecutively, you need to have a banquet hall that's available a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or you need to find 3 alternative venues that coincide on the dates that you need all in the same week. These factors limit what dates will be available to you in 2021, and so you want to think about that. How comfortable is it going to be for you to wait to make that call? Because the longer you wait, the reality is the fewer options you're going to have of future dates. So I do have an October bride who's already made that call and changed their date to 2021, because they said, you know what, it's possible that we might have a wedding this year, but we just don't want to worry about it, and we don't want to spend the next few weeks worrying, so we're just going to move. So if you find yourself in a situation where you've got a single venue, you're okay to be either Friday or Saturday or Sunday, or you're open to weekdays even. We do have some brides who've chosen weekdays in 2021. If you're open, you're flexible, you're not limited by time of year, you're not limited by, particular day of the week, then by all means, you can wait a little bit longer to see how 2020 date, your original wedding date, plays out, and then go from there. Just for instance, I have a bride, and I think she's here. I'm just scrolling through. I have a bride who mentioned to me that her brother has a very important exam that he's writing, and so they need to be cognizant of his exam dates and his study prep dates for next year. It's a medical exam he's writing, and so she wants to be sure that not only are they being mindful of what dates work for them, but for what dates work for her brother. So if you have factors like that you need to consider, then just start thinking ahead, because future dates are going to be, there's going to be more competition for future dates, I would say. Next thing on your list, your to-do list in this process should be, if you've had that conversation of, do I need to reschedule my wedding, and when do I need to reschedule my wedding? Once you've been through those 2 steps, the next thing you need to do is make sure that yourself and your partner are both on the same page about this, because this is trying for everyone, and a lot of couples are being amazing about it, and people deal with grief differently. So make sure you and your partner are on the same page on all of this. And our next week's conversation, my next week's positive planning session, is actually going to be, I'm getting a guest speaker on board who is a social worker, who's going to speak about mental health and coping strategies for couples that are going through this, because I know this has been so trying for all of you. So I'm getting a guest speaker to come hop on with me next week for the positive planning session and talk about mental health around everyone who's had to deal with rescheduling their weddings or just planning their weddings through this. So if you need help, there are resources out there. Feel free to message me. I myself am not an expert, but I can guide you towards resources that can help you. And keep an eye out for next week's session, where we're going to be bringing in an expert to chat with everyone about this. So check in with your partner, make sure both of you are on the same page, make sure everybody's coping okay. And next step is check in with your families. I know weddings are an emotional time, so you want to check in with your families and make sure that they're on the same page and they're okay as well with the fact that you're making the decision to change your date. Now we're coming into our 3rd step of how do you go about rescheduling, and this has been where a lot of couples have been reaching out, asking questions, and this is a complete brand new area. The average person has never thought about rescheduling a wedding, and so there isn't a lot of information out there, and so I'm really hoping that this can help you. First step you're gonna do is contact your venue. They are the first thing you need to secure. So if you are looking at a single day wedding, you've got your ceremony and reception in the same space, reach out to your venue, find out from them what their available dates are and what your options are, what their what their policies are about rescheduling. Find out all of that information and gather from them what the available dates are. Venues may not be doing this on a continuous basis. Some venues are doing it sort of on a week-to-week basis. So based on when your wedding date is, if you're within the next 6 weeks, they may, have that conversation with you, or they might ask you to hold off a little bit longer. Find out from them what it means, how flexible they are, what their policies are, and get availability from them for the next little bit, so that you have some dates that you can bounce off of. So is going to be to reach out to your venue and find out from them what their availability is like for future dates and what their policies are to reschedule. Once you have a list of tentative future dates available, you move on to step 2. Step 2, we're suggesting you send out a mass email to all of your vendors. Let them know this is the decision we've made. We want to reschedule and we want to move to a new future date. We don't know. We're working through the process of finding what that future date is going to be, but just make sure that everybody knows that this is the plan, so vendors can also make their decisions accordingly. If they need to move things around on their end, they know that the decision has been made, that there's not going to be an event on this particular date. Next thing I suggest is send out your requests for date change to your vendors in the order in which you booked your vendors. So what that means is, when you made your vendor bookings, you probably had a list of vendors that you wanted to secure first. So maybe photographer was really important to you, or your makeup artist was really important to you. Reach out to them in that order that you originally booked them for, and get them to take a look at what your venue's availability is like and see where their dates coincide. And you want to find that date that works for the venues as well as the vendors, and for yourselves and your families, right? So one of the tools that I want to mention at this point is a really easy way to do this is just set up a SurveyMonkey account. So SurveyMonkey lets you send out surveys, and if you've got dates from your venue, for instance, excuse me, my throat is really dry and I'm fasting today, so excuse me. So if you've got a list of dates that are available from your venue and that you like, so say you've got option 1 is a Friday and a Saturday, option 2 is a Saturday and a Sunday, and option 3 is a Friday. So you've got those 3 options, put them in a survey, send them out to all of your vendors, and have them just choose one of the options in a survey format. That way you've gathered all of this information without going through chains of emails with each vendor. Another really cool tool you can use at this point is called Doodle. I don't know if you guys have used this. Doodle is actually a meeting scheduling app. They have a website, and you can put in a few options in within creating that doodle. You can put in a few options and say, my first choice is Friday the 24th, and then my second choice is Sunday the 2nd, and my third choice is Monday the 4th. And your everyone you send that doodle to can choose and tell you what their first choices, second choices are, and when they're just not available. So if you use one of those apps, and I'll try to do a video tutorial of how to use Doodle, because I think that is going to be perfect and it's going to save so much time for you. Use Doodle, use a SurveyMonkey if that's easier for you, and send that out to all of your vendors. Now, coming back to what I was saying earlier, you want to reconfirm your vendor dates based on the order in which you booked them originally. So whoever was a must-have at your wedding in terms of a vendor, you want to make sure that you've got their dates and your dates coinciding right away. Some vendors, for example, your planner, your photographer, your videographer, they're probably only taking one event per date. So what that means is that if you've got a makeup artist, for instance, they can schedule you in a different time slot. Your cake person, for instance, they can take up to like 3 or sometimes even 4 wedding cakes per date, per weekend. I know cake artists who do 8 or 10 cakes in a weekend. So there is a little bit more flexibility with vendors like that. But ourselves, for instance, we're boutique style, so we don't take a large number of bookings every week. Like, we don't even do more than one wedding in a weekend, because we give each of our clients a lot of time, and we spend a lot of time connecting with all of the other vendors for that wedding. So if we are already booked for that weekend, it's very unlikely that we will take on a second wedding for that same weekend, unless you're comfortable working with one of our junior planners, or we've chatted about an alternative plan. So you want to make sure that you're reaching out to your vendors based on your must-haves, so you're not missing out on any of your favorite vendors, and you're using their dates first, and based on how many bookings they can possibly take within that weekend or within that day. Because that's the reality, is that you may have to lose some of your vendors. You may not have the identical wedding team again. Next step in creating that doodle is, after you've created that doodle and you've narrowed down that date of what your future date is going to be. And at this point, it's not a bad idea, if you're, a September or October wedding, even, to sort of do a soft hold on a future date. So reach out to your vendors and see what their availabilities are like. Ourselves, for example, like 2021 April is already, I think we just have one weekend available for 2021 April. So find out from them already, even if you've not made up your mind about whether you're rescheduling or not. Find out from your vendors what their availability is like, and then you'll be in a better position to make that decision, right? Next thing you're going to do is you're going to reach out to all of your guests. Now you've got a new date. You've been through all of this work. You've got a new date. Reach out to all of your guests and let them know there's been a change of plan. Send out an email. I don't generally love email invites, but this is this kind of situation where it is an email situation. Email everybody, let them know. We've seen some really cute resave my date or reschedule my date, kind of save the date posts that have come up, and I'm happy to share some ideas. If you're looking for some cute, innovative ways to sort of inform your guests that the date has changed, have fun with it. This sucks, but it's really, I'm pretty sure that you're gonna look back at this and see sort of how you guys have been through it together and how you've been there for each other. And so have fun with it, and embrace it if you can, and just smile along the journey, because it's about the memories you make. And so go make a great memory and do like a funny reschedule the date photo and send it out to all of your guests. We're suggesting email if you prefer to be sending it out in person, like by a paper invite. We can connect you with some great artists who've done some really beautiful work. There's actually some artists that have put together templates if you need to change your dates. They've put together templates as well that you can use, and you can just personalize to yourselves and use. So there are resources available for that as well. And that is your final step. Once you have informed your guests, now you are good to take a break from it all. Sit back, relax, and you're gonna be okay. One thing I wanted to note here was, and I did get a couple questions, not questions, but I did get a couple brides feeling this way, was we've done so much work and now I'm going to have to do this again. Yes, it is unfortunate, but all the work you've done is not going to be wasted. You have already made a lot of decisions about your wedding. You've made decisions about the vendors that you want at the wedding. You know what styles you're looking for. You know what you want and don't want. And all of that information is gonna not be wasted just because the date has changed. You're gonna be in a much better position to plan your wedding. And who knows, a vendor that you really wanted in the past and perhaps wasn't available for the original date, you might be able to get them now for the new date. So there might be upsides. There's definitely work that you've done for your wedding that is going to carry forward to the new date. So don't feel like you've wasted a lot of energy in planning it the first time around. you're not going to be wasting everything. You're just going to be using it in a different way. A few other notes that I had here was one of the questions that was emailed to me was, will a regular wedding of over 150 people happen in 2020? This is a very difficult question to answer. As of right now, the emergency order in Ontario is extended up till, I believe I just checked before I went on, is extended until the 6th of May. Ontario has emergency orders until the 6th of May. They have extended the orders once or twice before. The original dates were supposed to be in April. Now they've extended to May. So it's hard to tell. We are still hopeful that later in the summer and in the autumn and the fall, weddings will go back to normal. Life in general will go back to normal. So yes, it is going to be sort of a wait and watch. Things are changing constantly, so it's hard to answer that question, but just we're positive. You stay positive too, and like I said, it doesn't hurt to be prepared. So I've given you some steps, and I'll try to put it out sort of in a PDF as well. If you'd like, reach out to me. I can type out all of my notes and send it over to you. But yeah, 2020 weddings, we are still hoping they're going to happen. It's just a matter of when, but don't give up hope yet. Next question I had was, what am I doing with? The other question I had was, how have I been dealing with clients who have wanted to reschedule? So any one of my brides who has wanted to reschedule, and a few of you are on here and listening today. So we've been really flexible in that we're just moving over your deposits. So when you book a vendor, you pay a deposit or a retainer, a down payment for the service, whatever you may call it, and the balance is due before the wedding. So we've told all of our brides who are affected by this, your deposit is safe, move it over to a new date. We will just make sure that our availabilities align, and as long as we are available, we will simply move over the deposits. We're not doing any additional fees or rescheduling charges or anything of the sort. So if you've got a new date, we're moving over deposits right away. If for some reason we're not available on the new date, and that thankfully has not happened yet, all of our brides have been really proactive, and it's just about keeping communication lines open. If we're not available, then we are trying to connect with other planners in our network and find you a planner who can take it on and that we trust in as well. So we're trying to be as accommodating as possible and trying to give everybody as many options as possible. And if not, then we take it from there. The other question I had was, about insurance. So wedding insurance is not something that is going to help you in this situation. Somebody asked me, should I buy wedding insurance? So wedding insurance covers you for something like, you were scheduled to get married and you had a dress that you had booked, and now that dress boutique has closed doors. You don't have a dress. So wedding insurance covers you for that. Or, there is, say your venue, God forbid, knock on wood, is burnt down the week before the wedding. Wedding insurance covers you for things like that. COVID-19, unfortunately, it's a known situation, and we did reach out to insurance companies as well to find out how this would play in terms of insurance, but wedding insurance will not help you to insure yourself against the pandemic situation. And what were my other questions? In terms of vendors, if you're in a situation where a vendor is not available to work your new dates, your future dates, my suggestion to you is be kind, be polite. Everybody is affected by this. All of the vendors in the wedding industry are small businesses, and everybody is doing everything they can to be as accommodating as possible through all of this. If somebody is not able to accommodate you on the new date, just be respectful and kind. If vendors are able to give you deposits back, that's great. If vendors are not able to give you deposits back, again, be mindful that this is something that is affecting everyone globally. Venues, for instance, we're hearing a lot of complaints about venues, and some couples are having a nightmare of a time dealing with venues. So if you're in one of those situations, just, I would say, especially for venues, they are dealing with it on a week-to-week basis. So if you are an October bride, they might not entertain you right now, and you might have to wait a little bit longer. But again, be polite, be respectful, because in the end, if you do want to work with this vendor, if you do end up working with this vendor, you want to still be in their good graces. You want to make sure that everything is still positive between yourself and the vendor. So I don't think aggression leads anywhere. It is trying for everyone, but try to stay positive and try to be objective about it. And the reality is that this is your wedding day. It's about yourself and your spouse. It's about you guys celebrating your love for each other, and that's what we need to focus on. Everything else is just the party, and the party is happening because of that love you have for each other. So keep your priorities in place, keep your priorities focused on yourself and your spouse, and it'll help you provide a lot of clarity towards all of the decisions you need to be making. I'm just gonna hop in here and see if there's any questions at all. There's a few of you watching online. If you have any questions, just feel free to use on the bottom of my screen. It shows a questions section. So if you have any questions, or if I missed one of your questions that you sent me earlier, feel free to just pop in a question over there, and I can answer that. If not, that's everything from me this evening, and I will be coming back on to chat next week. I'm trying to do this on a weekly basis. So if you see me come back next week, I'm trying to keep it on the same day and time. If we can't do the same time, as I mentioned, I'm trying to get a mental health expert to join me and share some strategies, some actual actionable items that you guys can do if you are in a situation where you feel, you can use the extra help. So I'm trying to get the expert to come with me, and if I find that the 4 o'clock time doesn't work, then I might move it to 5. So if for some reason 5 o'clock is not working for you, let me know, because I'm just working out the details of that session as well. Again, this will be, if you missed this, I'm just seeing some questions coming in, but if you missed, then it's something that I have covered already. Then I urge you to just go back and listen to the session, because it will be live on, whoa, I don't know what my phone just did there. It will be on my story feed for the next 24 hours, I believe. And then I'm going to try to see if, oh, thank you. You're awesome too, Jazzy. I'm going to try to see if I can download the video. I'll be honest with you, this is my first live, telecast or broadcast or anything. It's really kind of strange talking to my phone, but thank you for all the waves and all the hearts that you've been sending me. And I'm going to try to download this video somehow. If any of you are, tech savvy enough to guide me through it, let me know. And I'm going to see if we can have it available offline later on as well. But it will be live in my stories for the next 24 hours at least. So on that note, I will say adios, and I will see you guys next week Friday at either 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, and we will chat about mental health strategies at that time. So reach out to me if there is anything that I didn't cover today and you still have a question about, or if you just want to say hi, just say hi and tell me how you're doing. That's always nice too. It's really nice hearing from all of you, and thank you so much for joining today. Bye.